We are going to talk with our next guest. For those of you who might be just joining us, a reminder that this is the Motivation Summit with Susan Fowler. Susan is the author of best-selling book, Why Motivating People Doesn't Work and What Does. And in this next segment, we're going to be welcoming Jacques Forrest. And unfortunately, he will not be on camera with us, but we will still be enjoying some interaction and engagement with him. Nonetheless, a couple of reminders. If you'd like to participate live on Twitter, we're using the hashtag Motivation Summit. And we will be taking some questions, and you can share those in the question panel throughout the event. So I'm thrilled to welcome Jacques. He's a professor at ESG UQAM, which is the biggest French-speaking business school in America. And he is a motivational researcher who has published 28 articles and 14 book chapters on optimal functioning. He's also a workplace consultant, an organizational psychologist, and a certified human resources professional. So Jacques, we are so thrilled to welcome you. I'm going to make sure that you have audio available, and welcome.
Hello.
Wow, Jacques, I'm so sorry that people cannot see you because you're really cute.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Jacques, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on this summit, among many reasons, is that you have been so involved researching motivation with the most prominent researchers in the world, Edward Deci, Richard Ryan, Dr. Marilyn Gagne, Robert Valleran. And so you are just immersed in this top level research. And you just published a fascinating article about money. And I was wondering if you might just start, why did you engage in this research around money? And we're going to then talk about money as a motivator in the workplace. But what led you to that research?
Yeah, in the workplace, people oftentimes think that money is the first motivator, but there's an interesting question called the lottery question. It has been asked since 1955 in different countries, and it goes like this. If you would have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your life, would you continue working? Around 76.3% of people would continue even though they don't need the money. So money is only but one reason to work. It's an important reason. It helps pay the bills and all sorts of things. But money as a motivator in the workplace, we have put too much importance on this.
So here's a question that I get every single time I am talking to people about that what people really need to thrive and flourish is autonomy, what we're calling autonomy, relatedness, and competence. I know that sometimes you use the term instead of relatedness, affiliation.
Yep.
And so if you could help us, and maybe we should go to the next slide. I'm not sure if this is a slide you want to talk about now.
Please, yep.
Okay, but how did you start to look at the relationship between money and the satisfaction or frustration of our basic psychological needs?
So if you look at the slide, you have in the third column the different types of motivation which we were able to measure. So intrinsic motivation is having fun doing work. You doing interesting tasks. Time flies by. So this is the intrinsic motivation. Then you have the identified motivation, which is purpose, meaning, or social utility of your work. Then it goes on. Introjected motivation is related to ego and reputation. So when you want to prove yourself or you want to avoid looking bad towards yourself, that's introjected motivation. And then you have extrinsic motivation, which can either be money or rewards or external recognition. So money is only but one out of four different types of motivation which you can have towards work. And when you link it with the basic psychological needs, this theory, the self-determination theory, postulates that there are three innate and universal psychological needs. So you have it from the day you're born till the day you die. So it's innate and it's universal. Everybody on earth has these. There's good research now which have been done in 123 countries. So it's scientifically strong. And the three most important needs, there are more than three, but the three most important are competence, autonomy, and affiliation. So you want to feel good at what you do. You want to feel free to make some choices within certain limits, and you want to feel connected to others. So when your brain has these vitamins, so competence, autonomy, and connectedness or affiliation, it increases fun and meaning, which then leads to a host of positive consequences. So energy, concentration, intra-role performance, extra-role performance, and adaptive behaviors. On the opposite, on the bottom part of the slide, when your brain doesn't have vitamin, when your brain cannot have fruits and vegetables, it relies on fast food. And fast food for the brain is reputation and money. In and of themselves, reputation and money are not always bad. Sometimes they positively predict positive consequences, but way less stronger than intrinsic and identified motivation. So we have put there several examples. For example, burnout, distraction, minimal performance, antisocial behavior. When we rely on money, usually people are more likely to cheat to get access to the rewards, and it leads also to non-adaptive behaviors.
So one of the things that gets me excited about the research in this slide is that a lot of people think that there's just two kinds of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. And what we really want people to understand is that there may be times when we don't just purely love what we're doing. Like I'll never love going through security at the airport, right? But
Yeah.
I could find purpose and meaning, or I could tie it somehow to my values, and that would be identified. And so if we can help people to either one, do what they love, or two, if they don't love it, they find meaning and purpose and they identify with it in some kind of through a values base, then you're saying that that's going to result in this kind of energy, concentration, role performance, those positive consequences.
You're right in saying that people usually know the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic, and you state it perfectly in your book. It is the declination between intrinsic and extrinsic which are important. So identified motivation, I think, is the underuse component of motivation. When you truly find meaning in what you do, it's not necessarily interesting and it's not necessarily linked to your ego or to money, but it makes a difference on this planet. So finding purpose and meaning is the underestimated motivational element in the workplace, I think.
I love that. And one other thing on this slide is that when you talk about interjected as being reputation, um, I know there's a popular model of motivation out there that talks about the importance that people need for status. Uh, is that is status and reputation? Would you say that those go hand in hand?
What is fun with self-determination theory is yeah, that you can have different targets or behaviors which can be motivated by different types of motivation. I was on a PhD thesis defense where the PhD student asked, why do you want to become a leader? Why do you want to be in a status of power or leadership? When people are there for the right reason, when they enjoy being a leader or when they find it important to have an impact on others, they are seen as positive and active leaders. But if people accept a leadership position for the prestigious title it's linked with, or with the salary raise that you have, or with the car that you get with that position, it leads to employees see that boss as being negative, avoidant, or controlling. So no action in and of themselves are negative as long as they are positively motivated or negatively motivated. So that's why you need to scratch the surface and see why do people want to do these different actions.
Exactly. So we keep saying it's the reason for the motivation that matters. And especially with leaders, the reason for your motivation to be a leader really matters to the people that you're leading. So really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. So let's go to your next slide. And for those of you, before you talk to the slide, uh, Jacques, one of the things, and this is a personal bias that I have, but there's a lot of popular books out there on motivation. There's probably more books on motivation that have been written than any other particular segment. Um, and and I'm hoping that people might appreciate that a lot of the popular books that are out there are based on the research that you're talking about today. And so I think it's really important for people, if they're going to embrace a particular type of motivation theory or whatever, that they become familiar with the researchers and the research that they're doing. So again, I want to thank you for the work you're doing. And this is an interesting example of it. So go ahead and talk about what this slide means. to
Yeah,
us.
this is a paper we have submitted for publication. It's done with Bart Kuves, Robert Buck, and there's this Vic from Oslo and Marilyn Gagne in Australia. And this is where you see the motivational power of either base salary. PFP stands for pay for performance. So you have annual pay for performance and quarterly pay for performance. Usually people think that in the workplace, money is the best motivator. That's why we go to work, and that's why we would put energy in what we do. In the center part of the slide, you see autonomous motivation, that's fun and meaning, and you have controlled motivation, which are ego and reputation. The green arrows are positive correlation. So as you can see, base salary is a positive contributor to fun and meaning, which then leads to increased effort and diminished intention to quit. The tricky part is when you look at annual pay for performance. Basically, paying your employees by performance annually reduces positive motivation and increases negative motivation. And the same goes with quarterly pay for performance. People in the pay industry will say you need to reward your employees often. You need to state it forward. You need to put it in front that you are paying well. But the more often you pay linked to performance, be it quarterly, in a quarterly manner or annually, it decreases the positive types of motivation and increases the negative types of motivation. There is a positive link between quarterly pay for performance and effort, but basically the more often and the more you pay your employees contingently, the more they are attracted in moving away from your company as an employer, because controlled motivation, ego, and reputation increases the likelihood that people go away. So if you want to keep your people for the right reasons, base salary, at least according to this study, is the best predictor.
Wow. So do you think, and I'm sure people are writing questions in the chat box for you. We're going to have, some question and answer in just a few minutes. But a question I have based on this is, do you think that when called it contingent pay, in other words, depending on your performance, then you will get certain money. That shifts people's perspective or focus away from what they're doing to the reward itself. And they actually start to feel pressure. They start to feel like they're doing it for that reward, and that pressure reduces their sense of autonomous motivation, which is not fun and it's not meaningful anymore.
Exactly. This is not to say that money is not important. It is important. It is important that you talk about money, that you feel that you have a fair salary. But in as much as it's no longer a concern, money is not important anymore. Money is like a key to open the door. When you get back home, you take your key, you open the door. But once you're in the home, you don't carry your key around. Salary is like the key. It opens up possibilities, but when the possibilities are open, you then move towards other motivational elements, and these are the three basic psychological needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, do you have a third slide?
Yes. This is a super interesting study that we have published this year. You can go through up until the end. Usually when we measure extrinsic motivation, it just states, are you motivated by money? We double-clicked on that extrinsic motivation box to ask people, why do you want to make money? So there are the financial stability motives, so paying for your bills, having a home. This had no impact on psychological well-being or psychological malaise or ill-being. It's only linked to your body envelope being okay. So you are fed, you have a roof around your head, so you're okay. Financial stability doesn't have a high impact on psychological well-being. There are positive motives for making money. So if you want to make money to give to others for charity, if you feel that your salary is fair, so for equity and justice purposes, or if you feel that you have enough money to have a certain amount of freedom or leisure, this leads to psychological need satisfaction. So it increases the satisfaction of autonomy, competence, and relatedness, which then increases psychological well-being and decreases psychological ill-being. This is where it gets interesting. And on the bottom left-hand part, this is when money can be bad. The bad motives for making money are pride, So you want to show off that you have a lot of money. Impulsiveness, you want to spend without thinking. Comparison, so when you look at your neighbor who just had a new car and you switch a new car so that you are better than him, and overcoming self-doubts or linking your personal value to the amount of money you make. This is where it increases um, need frustration, which increases psychological ill-being. Money is a value that is given to a piece of paper. If you take a $20 bill and you put it under the nose of a dog, the dog has no reaction. Only humans see a piece of paper and say, oh, I know what I can do with this. So when you double click on extrinsic motivation, there are some positive motives for making money, such as charity, equity, freedom, and leisure. But money can also be bad. So our next step in our research and intervention is trying to get companies and individual to increase the positive types of motivation or the informational power of money up and decrease the negative motives and the controlling motivation element of money down.
Jacques, thank you. This is so fascinating. And one of the things that I have really witnessed a lot in organizations are people thinking that they're working for money and they're asking for more money. And then, like you say, if you scratch beneath the surface, what you begin to realize is that part of the reason they're asking for money is they don't have a sense of justice in the workplace. They've got, for example, as in one organization where the CEO is making $17 million a year, and there's people who are underpaid compared to comparable jobs in their community. And so it's not that people necessarily are motivated by money, but they're motivated by the injustice of the inequity that they see of the distribution of resources.
You're so right, Susan. And money is oftentimes, um, usually people will complain with money, but you need to double click on these concerns to see what are underneath. And injustice, unfairness is usually one big issue. You're right.
That's awesome. Now, I don't know if you can see on your screen, but Becky Robinson just popped up, which means there's a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
And we're thrilled to take some. So the first question I'd like to ask is, how is the intention to quit quantified? So how large a factor is that intention to quit for the average employee?
The intention to quit, usually we measure the different intentions by 1 to 7 scales. So it's a Likert scale. I'm not sure I get the question right, but how is it measured? We ask several questions on do you intend to quit? Are you searching for a job? Did you apply elsewhere? So they are different gradient of intensity of intention to quit. But there's no doubt that extrinsic motivation is more highly linked to intention to quit than the other types of motivation. And a question I oftentimes have is, are these types of motivation different from sectors to sector? For example, are there any differences in the finance industry or the education industry or the consultation industry? We measured these types of motivation in French, English, Spanish, German, Dutch, Norwegian, Greek, Swedish, Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, Arabic, Indonesian, Vietnamese, and Chinese. And the more extrinsically motivated you are, the more likely you have to have negative consequences. And the more autonomously motivated you are, be it fun or meaning, the more positive consequences you have. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. So we actually need to move on to share some more information about Jacques on the next slide. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank you very much.
Follow Jacques on Twitter. And in our follow-up materials, we do have some links to articles that you're providing that will be of great help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.